Hello, good morning, Mona.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
How are you?
All good, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So we are meeting after a long time again.
Uh,
Congratulations to your college for again getting the A grade.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's
Thank
a
you so
big
much.
achievement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ma'am, we'll
So
start in 10 minutes.
let people join in.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
start.
Yeah,
Okay.
10 minutes, ma'am. We'll just let them join in.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, participants. Welcome to day 2 of capacity building program on research methodology. Today, we have a resource person. She also has an n number of research pursuits to her credit, Dr. Devjani Roy. Ma'am has been heading the postgraduate department of geography, Nirmala College, Ranchi University. She has done her PhD and her master's from Calcutta University. She has been a national scholar throughout. She has qualified for NET JRF and was supported by UGC fellowship for her research. Ma'am has about 22 years of experience in teaching at undergraduate as well as postgraduate level. Ma'am has about 21 papers published both in the national and the international journals. Ma'am has authored many books, edited many books. She has authored 2 reference books, namely Population Geography and Geography of Jharkhand, Land, Economy and People. Ma'am has also edited 2 books which are very popular, that is Development and Conflict and Environmental Degradation, Challenges and Remedies. Ma'am has convened many seminars at national and international levels which were sponsored by UGC, ICSSR, UGC CPE, NAC, and SEED, which is a research institute affiliated to Niti Aayog, New Delhi. Ma'am has also presented paper both at national and international level, and Ma'am has chaired a session at 33rd International Geographical Union Conference held in Beijing. She was awarded Award for Academic Excellence by SEED, a research institute affiliated to Niti Aayog. Ma'am has been a RUSA called Nodal Officer, an IQAC convener, and a CPE coordinator. Ma'am is also a content writer for environmental studies at Uttarakhand Open University. Ma'am has coordinated 2 refresher courses, namely Women's Studies and Gender Sensitization, and a refresher course on Earth Sciences. Also, ma'am has been a Board of Studies member for Ranchi University. Currently, at present, 5 students are under ma'am for PhD. 2 have already submitted their thesis, and ma'am is currently conducting a minor research project on women in unorganized manufacturing sector in Ranchi. Ma'am today would be taking a session on research design, which is a blueprint for the research process. We are eagerly looking forward to the session, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am. Dr. Devjani Roy. Thank you, ma'am, for taking time and coming for the workshop and enlightening us with the knowledge.
Thank you, Sonali Singh, for such a wonderful introduction. I do not know whether I deserve so much, but namaskar, good morning to all of you. It's indeed an honor to be present here today at this research capacity building workshop organized by NK College, sponsored by ICSSR. I'm truly grateful to the principal in charge, Professor Maushami Datta, for having invited me, and to all the faculty, the staff, and the college management for having me in their midst to share my knowledge with all of you. So without taking much time, I would like to start away with my presentation, because yes, I can see Maushami present. Professor Maushami, good morning to you. And thank you so much for having me once again at NK College. It's a privilege for me to be here. The college has again got an A grade, 4th cycle, such a wonderful college, and under the leadership of such a wonderful person. The entire college needs to be congratulated. And shall I start? I'll be talking today on research design. So research design and conceptual framework. As I will share my screen, I will be speaking. So I'll start sharing. Yes. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So this, as Professor Sonali has rightly said, that research design is the blueprint of any research. And it's a very important and integral part of research. Within the next 45 minutes, I'll be discussing why it is important and why it needs to be thoroughly and very carefully done, because a wrong research design will lead to an erroneous result. So it's an extremely important feature of research. See, this is the research process. In this research process, you will find different stages of research, like identifying the problem, reviewing literature, setting research questions. And I'm sure there are different faculty members who will be dealing with the different aspects of research. Since I have been given research design, which is the fourth stage, here you can see this, the choosing the study design. It is the fourth, it is an integral part of the research. And it's an extremely important feature of research, because research involves systematic, controlled, valid, and rigorous exploration and description of what is not known, establishment of associations, causations that permit accurate predictions. So whatever the prediction or the outcome of research is, definitely owes a lot to the research design that one undertakes. So it also involves, the research process, we all know, involves identifying gaps in knowledge, verification of what is already known, identification of past errors, limitations, and the strength of what you find largely rests on how it is found. So in order to find out something, we have to devise the right method of finding it out. So the main function of a research design is to explain how you will find your research question. So research design sets out specific details of your inquiry. Every step matters. So research design, it should include the logistical arrangements. For example, if you are planning to do a research on a section of the population, it's a social science research, and you are planning to study a section of the population, it is very important for you to have the right design. What type of a study you will undertake? What is the purpose of your study? Because if you do a random study, your result may not be according to what your presumptions are. So when you start doing a research, you have certain things in your mind, you frame a hypothesis, you have a research question, but then with the research question, if the design or the blueprint or the structure is not correct, then we cannot have the right results. So research design, as you will be just seeing, that research design is, again and again, as I'm saying, that you should not be confused between a study design and a research design. Study design is a part of the research design. Research design is in its totality. It is the entirety. Like from the start till the finish, what will be your roadmap? What will be the blueprint? That is your research design. A study design is a subset of research design. Now, a study design is one part of a research design, but a research design, we all have to remember, encompasses several studies. For any investigations, the selection of an appropriate research design is mandatory, because we need to have valid findings, we need to have comparisons, we need to have conclusions. A faulty design, again, I'm saying, will lead to misleading facts, and that will tantamount to wasting human resources, time, energy. In scientific circles, when you're talking about empirical investigations, when you're going out into the field and you're trying to study a community, a population, a section of the society, at that time, it is very important to have the right design. Otherwise, what is going to happen is, when you come back from the field and you sit down to work on your data, you will not be getting the correct result. So what is a research design? I have written over here in the slide that a research design is a plan, structure, and strategy of investigations, so conceived as to obtain answers to research questions and problems. Now, the plan is the complete scheme or the program of the research. It includes an outline of what the investigator will do from writing the hypothesis, that is the first thing, and their operational implications, that is the methodology, to the final analysis of data. Now, the traditional research design, which is generally called the blueprint, is a detailed plan of how the research is going to be completed, how it is going to be operated, how the variables are going to come in, how we are going to select a sample, how we are going to collect data, how it will be used as a basis for testing hypothesis, how we will analyze the result. So it is so many hows that come within the research design. It is a procedural plan, like I've said in the slide itself, that has been adapted by the researcher, by the one who is doing research, to answer questions. And how do you answer question? We have to answer question validly, objectively, accurately, and of course, economically, because in research, you cannot go on spending money uselessly. We have to come to a concrete solution within a time frame. So through a research design, what do? You decide yourself and communicate to others your decisions regarding what to study, how you propose to study, how you are going to collect information from the respondents, how you're going to select the respondents. That's also very important. Some faculty will be dealing with that also when you talk about surveying, sampling. So how you're selecting your respondents, how information is going to be collected, how it's going to be analyzed, how you're going to communicate your feelings or your findings. Now, everything comes within the scope of research design. In addition, you will need to detail in your research design the justification, the rationale of your decision that shapes your answers to these how. And what is the rationale? What is the justification? It is the hypothesis. When you have a hypothesis ready, you can, and then you come to the conclusion, you're justifying the means to the end. In presenting your rationale and justification, you also need to support them critically from the literature that you have reviewed. And you also need to assure yourself and others that the path that you propose to take will yield valid and reliable result. That is very important. You have to convince the departmental research committee when you're doing a research that, yes, my study will come to a valid finding. So we all aim to do that. That is what research is about. So if you don't have a proper blueprint and elaborate plan in front of you that addresses all the steps of research, you cannot come to a suitable conclusion within a limited period of time. Now, here is the functions of a research design. Now, the above definitions that we have tried to discuss up to now, whatever I have said about research design, from that we can just say that research design has two main functions. And I have written the two functions in the slide. As you can see, the first relates to the identification of procedures and logistical arrangements required to undertake the study. The second one emphasizes on the importance of quality in these procedures to ensure their validity, objectivity, and accuracy. Hence, through a research design, what do? We conceptualize an operational plan to undertake various procedures, various tasks to complete our study. How? We ensure that these procedures are adequate. We ensure that they are valid, they are objective, they are accurate answers. They give accurate answers to the questions that we have asked. Now, if we take the first of these functions, the research design should detail for whom, for you and for the supervisor and for the departmental research committee and for the readers, all the procedures that you plan to use and the tasks that you're going to perform. That should be explicitly and clearly written in a research design. So a research design should do the following things. What are the things that a research design should do? It should provide detailed information on the following aspects of study. See, I have written within stars, I've written certain things like who, how, and all. So who will constitute the study population? That is the first question. When you are studying something, especially in social sciences, you're doing an empirical study, your first question will be, who will constitute the study population? Whom am I studying? How will the study population be identified? How do I identify? Because there are certain characteristics on the basis of which I choose my sample. Will it be a sample? Will it be a whole population? That is also a question. Sometimes if the community is small, or if the section is small, or if the class is small, I can take the entire population. But if it is a large part, then I have to choose the right sample, because that sample should represent the totality of my findings. If the sample is selected, how will I contact the sample? I have to contact the sample, because if it's a field study, if it's an empirical study, if I have to do a study on population or a community or a society or anything, I have to reach out to the respondents. If I have a questionnaire with me, I have to reach out to the respondents. How do I contact them? Then second, I also need to take their consent, because when you do a study without consent, that is called unethical. We cannot have a study that has not taken the consent of the respondents. What will be the method of data collection? In case of questionnaire, where will they send back the questionnaire? You see, now we are having so many surveys, online surveys being done through Google Forms. Now, if we have any query, whom do we go for that queries? It's not always that you're opening a Google form and you find that you can answer everything, or you need to answer everything. You might have certain queries. Whom do you go to the queries? And again, after you filled up your questionnaire totally, how do you return it back? So these are so many things that need to be a part of a research design. Otherwise, when we do a study, how can we get the right answers to the questions that we have addressed? Now, there is a difference between qualitative and quantitative design. Sometimes research is purely qualitative. People who are doing research in literature, who are doing research in history, who are doing research in feminist or gender studies, they usually adopt the qualitative method of research. But others, social science people or scientists, they are more engaged in quantitative. Okay, so now I will tell you the difference between
हिस्ट्री में मैंने वही बोला, हिस्ट्री में जाके ही मिलेगा.
Qualitative. I think there is someone is unmuted.
Yes, ma'am. Muted the participant.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So now I'll be dealing with quantitative and qualitative. So overall, there are many designs. Like I'm just choosing qualitative, quantitative, but I'll come to the last slide when I'll tell you about other types of designs also. Quantitative study, as you can see, it is specific, it's well structured, and it has been tested for validity and reliability, and it can be explicitly defined and recognized. Quantitative study, it can be explicitly defined and it can be recognized. But a qualitative study may not have these attributes or may have them to a lesser degree. It may not have the same, rigid structured. It can be less specific and precise, and sometimes they do not have the same structural depth. But the main focus of qualitative study, you must understand, is to understand, to explain, to explore, to discover, and clarify situations, feelings, perceptions, attitudes, values, beliefs, and experiences of a group of people. You see, everything cannot be quantified. If you are going to a war zone and trying to interview people who are experiencing the war, you may not be able to come up with the right numbers, but you may be able to understand their emotions, their perceptions, their beliefs, their attitudes, and you can produce it in the form of a research paper. Now, the thing is that both of them have their plus and minuses. Both of them have their strong points and negative points. Now, a study design, when you do a study design or a research design, whether you will adopt a qualitative measure or a quantitative measure depends on the nature of your study. So a study design is sometimes based on deductive rather than inductive logic, and they are flexible as like quantitative research. You can say that it is a deductive form of research, or it can be an inductive form of research. So they can be linear, they can be non-linear in their operationalization. A study design mainly entails the selection of people whom you choose for information, who will give you the information. An open frame of inquiry is explored, it's gathered, the information that is gathered, the parameters of the study, the information gathering process. It can be flexible, it can be evolving, and most qualitative studies are like this. They are not very rigid, but they are not very structured, but at the same time, they can come up with extraordinary results, which quantitative research may not be able to deliver. Quantitative research is actually measuring. It is a measurement, it's a classification requirement, the information that has been gathered, that has to be structured, that has to be, sometimes it's predetermined and then proven. The measurement is there, the clarification is given. Quantitative design bring about more clarity, and there is a proper method of data collection. But in qualitative method, you don't have that proper method of data collection. Maybe qualitative method is an overlap between the two. It is a partly, you have the logic is followed, but at the same time, you are not bound by certain, rigid structures. You have the flexibility of understanding or interpreting the feelings, the attitudes of the respondents. In in-depth interviewing, there is something called in-depth interviewing. That is a method of data collection, and also the oral history is also taken. So in that, if you mix up the two designs in any research, if you have a balance between qualitative and quantitative research, then that is the best method. You're able to deliver the goods, because after all, in social sciences, we are dealing with human beings. The main respondents are the human beings. So human emotions, you cannot overlook human emotions. Just numbers will not give you the exact picture of what you're trying to find out. In quantitative research, respondents' concordance does not occupy an important place, but in a qualitative research, it does. The power gap between a researcher and the study population in qualitative research is smaller. What happens in a qualitative research? The researcher goes directly to the population, is speaking to the population, so there is no power gap. There is something called a mixing of the researcher with the respondents. In a quantitative research, what happens? It is the numbers that matter. So you are a little bit cut off from the the emotions of the people that you're handling. When I say emotions, I don't mean to say that the people will come up with their sob stories and say that, see, this has happened to us, and you get swayed emotionally. No, a researcher has to be very logical, very accurate, and whatever research is undertaken, the design has to be such that the results reflect the findings in a very accurate manner. So moving on, quantitative research, enough detail about a study design is provided for it to be replicated. You can replicate a design. For example, if there is a questionnaire, then you can replicate a questionnaire, and it can be replicated for verification, reassurance also. You can go back with the same questionnaire and find out if the numbers tally. Qualitative research has little attention with respect to the structure of the study, as I've already said. So replication becomes a little impossible in case of qualitative research. Another difference between the designs of qualitative and quantitative study is the possibility of introducing a researcher bias. Now, this is something which we should not do. A researcher cannot afford to be biased just because it is a qualitative research. You're trying to find out the attitudes of the people. For example, I'll give you an example that there is maybe the COVID and lockdown. Last 2 years, a lot of research has been done on COVID and its impact on the population. So when you go and do a study, a qualitative study, people will come up with different types of stories. Now, if you listen and if you are emotionally swayed away by each and every story, then you cannot go ahead. So qualitative research, sometimes, what happens, a bias comes in. You are more biased towards some people or some respondents or some attitudes, some beliefs, and that comes in the study. That will never come in a quantitative study, because in a quantitative study, you are only doing maths, you're only dealing with numbers, and there is more accuracy in that. In a qualitative study, biasness might come in. Then qualitative research, it's, of course, you should keep in mind, we are talking about research designs. So I should say study designs in qualitative research are more appropriate for exploring the variations and diversity in any aspect of social life. So if you want to study the variations, if you want to study the diversity that is existing, then qualitative research is the best. But if you want to study the extent of diversity, if you want to study the extent of variation in terms of numbers, then quantitative. So if your interest is only in studying beliefs, or values, or understanding perceptions, meanings, attitudes, then qualitative is your research design. But if you want to focus on the extent of a particular attribute, like belief, like values, like practices, then a quantitative design should come up. So for a good quantitative research, it is important to combine quantitative skills with qualitative ones. You cannot, if you just separate the two, you will find that your results are not matching with what you are experiencing in the field. If you just numbers, because see, when you just ask questions without getting involved in the respondent's life, a question may just give you numbers, and that will not give you a complete picture. So a mix of quality and quantity would be the right design. And I've written over here, qualitative, quantitative, qualitative approach is a most comprehensive research design, and that is worth consideration. So now you have your research design. You have in your mind your research question, you know what you want to do, you have your hypothesis ready, and then you have your research design. Now I will deal with some of the commonly used designs in quantitative studies. These are some of the designs. So the first is the number of contacts, second is the reference period, and the third is the nature of investigation. Now, based on the number of contacts with whom, contacts with the study population, the design can be cross-sectional, before and after studies, and longitudinal studies. Now, I will deal with each one of them one by one. Let me tell you over here that I have already sent the handouts or the literature of my lecture to the college authorities. It will be shared by them. So here I have just, I'll be mentioning the basic points. What happens in a cross-sectional study? Cross-sectional study is the most commonly used quantitative design for social sciences. It is a one-shot study. What do? We select a cross-section of the population for study. That is what we do. And then we go and obtain information for them. A cross-sectional study design is extremely simple. You decide what you want to find out and how you want to find out. You identify the population, and I mean the study population, and you can select a sample, or if needed, or if not, you can take the entire population. For example, if you're doing a research on your college students, you need not select a sample. You can take the entire class or the entire semester for your study. And then you contact your respondents and hand them over a questionnaire. And in this study, what happens? You just have one contact with the population that you're studying. So it will not give you the liberty to assess the change. So what happens in a cross-sectional study? You meet the respondents or the people whom you are studying once. You give them the questionnaire or you ask them questions, they fill up their questionnaire, and then you return it back to you. So you know what is going on and all your data comes out automatically. But if you want to study the change over a period of time, you cannot do that through this study because you are meeting the respondents only once. But nevertheless, it is the most economical research design, and it's the most commonly used research design. Second is the before and after design. Now, if you want to measure the extent of a change, supposing there are several policies of the government, like Ujjwala scheme. Okay, Ujjwala scheme gives LPG to people. It's a form of clean energy, and the government is trying to make it a common practice that people start using LPG so that there is clean fuel used and the health of the women improves. So what you can do is you can select a population who are benefited by this Ujjwala scheme before. Not benefited, I would say the beneficiaries. You can do a study before the implementation of this policy, and then you go back to them and do it after the implementation of the policy. So this is before and after study. Then what happens? You can compare the change in their lifestyle, maybe the change in their attitudes, maybe the change in their expenditure pattern, or the change in their life health. All these things can be studied before and after. Okay. Same thing you can do for before and after COVID vaccination, whether they had the disease or they did not have the disease. That also can be done. So what your problem is, that will decide what your design will be. Research design is decided by the problem that you want to study. The third thing is the longitudinal. In that, what happens is it's a before and after study only, and it's an appropriate method of measuring the change. You go back to the same respondents within a time frame. For example, if you are collecting factual information about, say, mortality or morbidity, or even fertility patterns of population or women's participation in labor, then you can you can do this over a period of time, like over a period of 3 years or 5 years. Over the study period, you can have a longitudinal study. The section that you're studying, the sample that you're studying remains constant. You go back to that same sample again and again to find out if there has. For example, if you are studying the expenditure pattern in women-headed households, that can be a study, expenditure pattern. Now, women-headed households, you choose women-headed households. There are some 30 or 50 women-headed households in rural areas, maybe you're choosing. And then you keep going back to them to see if the expenditure pattern has changed over the years. Now, women are more perceptive to many changes. For example, this Ujjwala scheme only. When the scheme is introduced, the women-headed households took over the scheme instantly. The men may not have taken. So women-headed household, the expenditure pattern changed. And if they are, they are the head of the households, they will determine what will the expenditure be, and so on and so forth. So a longitudinal study is actually a before and after study, but it goes on and on over a time period. Then we have a reference period study. This is another time frame design study. And that can be divided into retrospective, prospective, and retrospective perspective. So what is retrospective? When you're studying about some incident that has taken place in the past, something that has occurred in the past, some situation, some problem. If you're studying the partition of India, 1947, what happened during the partition? Now, this is a retrospective study. And you usually, apart from the data that you have, you depend on the memory of the respondents also, how they are recalling certain incidents, how they are saying things, how what their expression is. So that is a retrospective study. What is a prospective study? Prospective is with the help of data when you're analyzing what the future change will be. Now, if you're studying climate change, how do you do climate change? Climate change, you have a set of data. With the set of data, what you're trying to do is you are trying to understand or predict the climate change that will take place in the near future. The third one is a retrospective prospective study. You are studying the past phenomena. For example, cyclones in the Bay of Bengal or cyclones in the Arabian Sea. When you're studying cyclones, you have a past record of the cyclones, and then you are predicting the future. So it's a retrospective and prospective study. Then there is another thing called experimental study on the nature of investigation. Experimental study, non-experimental, and semi-experimental study. Now, what happens in an experimental study? In an experimental study, for example, I'll give you an example of COVID. Now, COVID vaccine was introduced. Somewhere in 2021, it was introduced. Now, before an intervention, it's an experimental study design. How many people will be selected? Who will the sample be? From which section of the society? And then what happens? The cause of the disease is there, and the effect is studied. After intervention, what effect it has on the population, that is studied. That is an experimental study, that you start from the cause and you come to the effect. Okay, so you start with an observation and then again you come to the effect of the intervention. In a non-experimental thing, what happens? You see the effect. You see how many people have survived COVID. And then you go back, whether they had been vaccinated, whether they had comorbidities, whether they fall into a particular age group, whether they fall into a particular section of the society, whether they had medical aid and so on. So it's non-experimental. There is no intervention in this. In this, what we are doing, from the effect, we are going back to the cause and we are trying to find out. And then there's something in between, which is called a semi-experimental study also. This has the properties of both experimental and non-experimental. And then there are many experimental designs, but unfortunately, due to lack of time, it is already 10:40 and I have to wind up in 10 minutes. I'll just take 10 more minutes because I need to take up some questions also. So within 10 minutes, I will just tell you in short that there are so many types of experimental designs that you can adopt any experimental design which will suit your research question, what you want to find out, how you will justify your hypothesis, and so on. So moving on, the last slide shows that these are the different types of research designs. There are many more. I'm not going into all because time will not permit me to discuss all in detail. So I start with the first research design, that is a trend. What is a trend study? It's a very common terminology, a trend study. It actually maps the change over a period of time. And a trend analysis will help you to find out what happened in the past, what is happening now, and what is likely to happen in the future. This is a trend study. So the design will involve selecting a number of data, observation of the past, together with a picture of the present or the immediate past, maybe with respect to the phenomena that the study has taken, and then make certain assumptions of the future trend. So it is a trend study. The name itself says what it is. And in a trend study, you can forecast by extrapolating past, present, and then making a prediction for the future. Now, for example, you may want to examine changes in, say, political preference. Now, see, if you see 75 years of Indian political history, you will find that the attitude and political or elections or political preference, it has changed. If you want to study the change, how it was, say, post pre 1980, post 1980, then that is a trend study. And then maybe you can predict the future. Why I'm saying pre and post, like the age of voters was reduced from 21 to 18 years, and then you had more number of youth voters. Previously, voting for election in India was limited to only the adult population. So when we had the first election, we had only the adult people going, but gradually we became more inclusive, and we have brought in the youth also. Now, when you do a trend study of the changing preferences of people with respect to political preferences, then you can do a study, a trend study. What is a cohort study? A cohort is actually a part of the population which has a common characteristic. Now, population or the entire population only, it's so huge that you can't make a complete study. You have to select one characteristic that is common. For example, you can take the people who have passed after 2010, maybe the commerce graduates. After 2010, if you choose the commerce graduates as a cohort, you can choose it as a cohort. Now, what will they have a common characteristics? They are all commerce graduates. Maybe they are all from Mumbai University, and maybe they have all graduated after 2010. So that is the common characteristic cohort. Have the characteristics of cohort, then you can take a study. There's a lot of disturbance. Can you please mute? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please, because you see there are so many participants and it becomes a little disturbing. Now, what happens for a cohort study? You need not be from the same respondents. You can go back to them. You can have a longitudinal study. The common characteristic of a cohort study is that the people all have the common characteristics, like they are all graduates after 2010 from Mumbai University. They are all common graduates, commerce graduate. And then you start studying. You can have a cross-sectional study, you can have a longitudinal study, you can have anything, and then you can find out how many people have been employed, how many people have started their own business, how many people are still unemployed, and so on and so forth. So that is a cohort study. You can even do a cohort study for women who are married before the age of 21. That is almost like child marriage before the age of 21, and you can do a cohort study on that. So these are the different types of research designs that you can adopt. Then panel studies. The third one is panel studies. They are similar to trend and cohort studies, but in addition to that, they have the same respondents. You go back to the same respondents. In cohort studies, you have a common characteristics of respondents, but you may not go back to the same respondent again and again. You can choose n number of respondents. In case of panel studies, you have the same number of respondents, so you can, of course, identify the change in their attitude, their perception, their lifestyles, everything. So this panel study is a little more refined form because only a particular section is studied through repeated study. Then comes the most important and most familiar research design, that is a case study. Many of us do this case study. It's the most prevalent form of study in quantitative research. Now, what is a case? Many people ask me, what is a case? Is a police case a case? No. A police case need not be a case. A case means it's you are studying someone. Who is that someone? You can study the entire population. You can study one person. You can study a group of people. You can study a firm or an organization. You can study an institution. Anything that is a case study. So, but whatever you are studying, that will be in its entirety. That will be a holistic study, a thorough study. And in selecting a case, you usually have a purpose. So it's a purposive study, and you are information oriented, you are judgmental about it. You have a useful design for a case study, and this design is of immense relevance because it focuses on exploring and understanding rather than quantifying and confirming. So in a case study, what you do, you go to your sample, you go to your respondents, and then you are not interested in quantifying. You are interested in the overall or holistic behavior or attitude or outcome of the study. So those are the dynamics that you have to keep in mind. In this design, your attempt is not to select a random sample. You must have a purpose of selecting a case study. If you're doing a case study, the obvious question that the research committee will ask you is, why are you selecting this case? So you have to justify your answer with your purpose. My purpose of study is this, and therefore I'm choosing this as my case study. This is my research design. Another form of research design is focus group discussions. Focus groups are a form of qualitative research in which attitudes, opinions, perceptions towards an issue or a product or a program, they come out through an open discussion. So a group of people are called, and they are made to, they are given their problem or the program, and they are asked for their interpretation of it. It's a very popular method. Sometimes what happens, if you're doing a survey in a rural area, you're not able to, sometimes, all the people try to give you similar answers. So at times you're frustrated. If you're having a household survey, you're visiting different households and you're getting the same answer, or maybe you're not getting any answer. They refuse to answer you. In those times, focus group is very important. You can call them, you can approach the panchayat people and say that I want to do a focus discussion, and the panchayat people will call the village headman and everyone, people who are able to answer certain queries, and they can sit together and they can give a focus group discussion. You can have it and you can come up with very successful results. Then last is the participants observation. What is a participants observation? It's another strategy of gathering information about social interaction or a phenomena in qualitative study. What happens? It is when the people, members of a group meet the researcher, and the researcher tries to understand. It's his participants observe what he is observing. Many things are said, many things are not said. For example, I'll go back to the same example I gave you. If it's a war zone, now many people may not be able to speak or maybe agreeing to speak in a war zone. So if they are not speaking, what do we do? The participants' observation becomes handy at that time. Sometimes if there are sensitive things like, say, HIV/AIDS, when you're dealing, when your questionnaire deals with those things, sometimes the participants' observation becomes handy because people are very reluctant to speak about certain things. Certain diseases are a taboo. So now with this, I come to the end. These are some of my references. So I would just like to wind up what I've said in 2 or 3 sentences. The first is we see that the conceptual framework of any research rests on research design. First. Second, the outcome of any research will depend on the robustness of research design. It has to be robust. Third, very often design is overlooked, ignored by the researcher, which leads to faulty conclusions. So we have to be very careful about which design we are choosing. Fourthly, an appropriate design will lead the researcher to his or her destination in a smooth manner. And fifthly, the last point and very important point, when selecting a research design, it's important that we ensure that the design is valid, it is workable, and it is manageable. Thank you. With this, I end my lecture, and I'm now open. It's 10:50. So we can take up a few questions if there are. Can I see the chat box?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, chat box doesn't have any.
Participants to please post their questions in the chat box, and if required, participants can unmute themselves and ask their questions. Any questions from the participants? The platform is open for you all.
Ma'am, I think you've explained it so well. Nobody has.
Thank you, ma'am, for this informative session. If I want to study students' behavior post-pandemic, that will be a panel study. Yeah. So, yes. You see, Poonam Shah has asked this question. Thank you, Poonam, for asking this question. It's a very appropriate question because usually we are confused. We don't know what we want to study and what are the results that we expect to find out. So for doing a study on the behavior, you can adopt this method of panel study. Yes, that can also be done. Quite rightly, you can have this method of study, provided you are aware of the results that you want, that you expect. Okay, what type of results? Do you want a qualitative study? First of all, you find out that, or you want a quantitative study. Sometimes what happens, we are more interested in numbers. If you're interested in numbers, if you want to do a lot of statistics with the numbers, then it's quantitative. But if you are studying about the human aspect of then qualitative study will do. So I think, ma'am, I have answered your question. And then we have another, Manisha. Yes, Manisha, madam, can you elaborate? Okay. So you want to elaborate on panel studies. So panel studies are basically a combination of, two, trend and cohort. Now, trend means you are studying a trend, a particular trend over a period of time. A cohort is you are taking a part of a section of the entire population. Okay, so when you are going to a panel study, you are combining both. You are doing it in such a manner that you are studying the trend. In addition to that, you are this study is also prospective in nature, so it will give you the trend also. So in a panel study, you sometimes, supposing you want an example, Manisha, I can give you an example. Supposing you want to find out how much the family's expenditure is on petrol. So if you want to do this type of a study in, say, in Malad, Malad area of Mumbai. First of all, that is your cohort. You cannot have the entire population. Malad is the very big area. You can't go to everyone's house and have this. But you can choose people who use cars, who have a single car, maybe single car, single four-wheeler, and they are using it. For that, that can be a cohort, and your study you can do a study on the expenditure pattern of these families. And when you do a study on the expenditure pattern of the families with one car, and who are staying in Malad and who are maybe communicating to far off places, then that can be your panel study. You can also come up with the future trend, the perspectives, but then you have to go back to the same population again and again. Supposing you are selecting 50 respondents of your cohort who are owners of four-wheelers, who are living in Malad, who are maybe going out to work, out of Malad to work, and then you do a study, you go back to them again and again, so that over a time frame, you can assess the change in the expenditure pattern, and you can also predict the future trend of the expenditure. So Manisha, have I satisfied you? Yes. Okay, thank you. Poonam Shah and Manisha has already thanked me. Thank you. Anyone else?
Any more questions from the participants? Okay, ma'am, I think that. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to be sure. Is quantitative research a must, or can we just do a good or a great qualitative research?
Of course. May I know your name, sir?
I'm Mahesh.
Yeah, Mahesh Balakrishnan, sir. Sir, yeah. So a good qualitative research is extremely appreciated in the Western countries. You see, in India, we are more worried about numbers. We want to come up with numbers. We want very complicated statistical tests to take place, so that there is, people are proud to say that we have done a lot of maths, a lot of statistics, but everything cannot be justified by numbers alone. So a good qualitative research, and if you see the Western countries, they totally focus on qualitative research. In fact, most of the research that is done in Harvard and other good universities in social sciences, they are qualitative in character also. Even feminist research and researches in gender, these are qualitative research. But yes, when we are coming to numbers, we need numbers also. Supposing I want to do a research on climate change, or I want to do a research on the cropping pattern changes, or I want to do a research on the income changes, then I will not be able to justify my research design by saying that I'll do only a quantitative research. So depending on what you're trying to find out, how you're trying to find out, we can do that. And of course, qualitative research is equally, in fact, you have to work harder on that. Your language has to be very sound, otherwise you will not be able to express properly. So Mahesh sir, have I answered your question?
Yes, very much. Thank you, and a nice presentation.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any participants wish to ask questions to Madam?
Ma'am, I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Yes, Aman.
Yes, Aman.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Aman, ma'am. I want to ask you a question regarding my project. Well, recently I took up the project, which was sentimental based analysis. So, ma'am, actually it was a kind of hybrid analysis, you can say, where my sentimental based analysis was supported by the number of the input or the primary data that I have collected. So, ma'am, I just want to ask that how can I enhance all this too? Because I felt that in order to perform this hybrid analysis, I was finding myself insufficient to be good at both. So how can I overcome this?
Well, Aman, you are an MSc IT student, I believe. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So see, every what should I say? Every faculty, when we're talking about sciences and social sciences, pure science, social science, humanities, they all have their own way of doing research. They all have their own research design. Now, your particular problem, you just want to enhance your findings. I think you can talk to your supervisor, and your supervisor will able to show you the right track, because you see, a very generalized answer will not help you. You have a specific problem, and that specific problem needs to be addressed. So for that, I would suggest that you go back to your supervisor and talk, because you see, one person cannot be an expert in everything. When I'm talking about research design, I am giving a very general view of how research design should be, or how it can be, or in a very general manner. But when we move towards specific problems, Aman, we need to have an expert to tell us about it. Okay. So Aman, I would suggest that you go back to your supervisor and sit with your supervisor and find out how you can enhance your findings of your project. Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your guidance. Thank you so much.
Any participant would like to ask any questions?
I think we can move ahead.
Yes,
yes.
Yes, sure. Thank you, ma'am. We'll move to vote of thanks.
Thank you, madam. On behalf of the management, director madam, principal madam, and vice principal, and the entire team of Nagindas Khanwala College, I extend a really hearty vote of thanks to our resource person, Dr. Debjani Roy ma'am, who spared the time from her busy schedule to grace the capacity building program. Today, we had an opportunity to hear her thoughts. She spoke about research process, research design. She has explained the research design concept with the case studies. She has answered all the questions precisely. Thank you, madam. Thank you for enlightening us with your knowledge. Thank you to the management, Director Dr. Mrs. Ansi Rose madam, in charge principal, Professor Dr. Moshmi Datta madam, and vice principal and IQAC coordinator, Dr. Moona Mehta madam, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, madam. Once again, thank you to Dr. Debjani Roy madam. We are looking forward to hear you in more workshops organized by the Nagindas Khanwala College.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Professor Moshmi Datta, Dr. Mona Mehta, and all the participants who were there. I can see 175 participants, which is a very big number. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
Madam. It's always nice when you're there.
No, it's nice for me, and I can see such a big number. I feel so privileged that I'm speaking to 175 participants.
So nice of
So
you.
nice,
Most
so
welcome.
nice. So keep up the good work. You already are a 4-time A-grade college, and you just keep up the good work. We look up to you for more inspiration. Thank you so much.
Ma'am. Thank you for
May I
coming.
leave now?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Now we will begin with the next session. I would like to introduce our next resource person, Professor Dr. Maushmi Datta. She is a dynamic and true researcher. She has all the questions, answers to the research questions. As we have heard her yesterday, today she will be speaking about review of literature. I welcome you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm back again today with a different topic, however. Today I'll be speaking on literature review, which is not liked by majority of the researchers. So let us see after my session today, how many of you really fall in love with doing review of literature. Actually, review of literature is a fantastic part of research. If you do your review of literature well, your research work, your research outcome, your research applications comes out to be fantastic. So let us see how, by not making it boring, we can really do our review of literature well. I take a second to share my screen and start my session. I think everyone can see my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my topic is review of literature. So when it is review of literature, definitely we are dealing with the books, we are dealing with the library, we are dealing with binoculars, because we are always looking into small letters, and after some time we really need a binocular to do a review of literature. So let us find out how to do it. Now my flow of presentation will try to find out what is review of literature, and why do we do this review of literature? What is the aim and purpose of this? How to create it? What are the different types? How to conduct it? Very, very important. How to plan it out, how to research it out, how to organize, how to write, and so on. What are the different parts of review of literature? What are the steps of doing review of literature? Give me a second, please. हाँ बाहर से जो आया है ना फर्स्ट ईयर ये तो पोइसा जिमखाना का है, ये तो सब्जेक्ट, ये तो लोकल है। नहीं करो फिर बाद में देखो। I'm sorry for the interruption. The paths, the steps, 7 simple rules which we should follow when we do review of literature. What are the common errors which we make while doing review of literature? What is the proper style, acceptable style of writing review of literature? What are our goals and our writing process? Now, if we come to, many a times we have done this, but if we come to what is literature review, it is nothing but a review, or we can say it is a survey of the scholarly sources. Okay, the scholarly sources can be your books, it can be journals, it can be a soft component, it can be so many things. Okay, that we will come to it later on. But literature review is a survey of scholarly sources, so that for whichever topic you're doing your research, it gives an idea about the topic. That is the most important. So this increases the value of your topic, the area of research, that wherever you are researching, what did the others do in this area? And if they have done it in that area, in which way they have done it in that area? How it was different than what you will be doing it, So review of literature is a survey of the scholarly sources that provides an overview of the particular topic. This is a compulsory part of research. Unless and until we do a review of literature, your research is an incomplete one. Before you really jump into the ocean of doing the research in a particular topic, it is compulsory to find out that whether anyone else have studied or not, and if anyone else have studied, how they have studied. So we can say the basic component of a literature review is description of the publication. That means X has written that, Y has written that, and so on. Summary of the publications. You cannot write everything X has written. Okay, so what did X write? What did Y write? You make a summary. We will all be dealing with these points in the later part of my presentation today. And then once you find out, once you give enough time and do an elaborate review of literature and find out, you give that what is not being done in the research topic which you have taken. Many people have studied many things, but what is not being done? So my dear friends, literature review, the importance lies here. Literature review helps us to identify the gaps in research. Just because there is a gap in research, you are doing the research. In my yesterday's session also, I told you, research is something innovative, something new. So if you work in the same topic which others have already studied, it is not called a research because it is a repetition. Now the question arises that many a times we find that that same topic is been researched by different researchers. Why this is so? It may be so because maybe it is on a different purview, it is in a different area, the methodology may be different, and so on. So, but everything cannot be the same. There must be some gap, and that is why you are doing the research. Whenever you do review of literature, that means what? You are just flooded with the books, journals, and so on. So what are you gaining actually? You're gaining a body of knowledge, a huge amount of knowledge. Maybe every knowledge, every point which you take up in your literature, which you read, is not written in as a part of literature review. Never mind, but you get enough knowledge, and that knowledge gives you the base. Yesterday, I spoke of confidence. It is this knowledge which gives you the confidence. Unless and until you have confidence, you really cannot be a good researcher. So review of literature is a compulsory part of any research. It has to be there. Unless and until review of literature is there, the gap cannot be identified. And if gap is not identified, this is not a valid research at all. So, friends, we can say that since it is, and literature review, I always say, it starts as you think of starting a research. And literature review ends when you have ended your research, because it is a never-ending job. Every time you try to find out what others have studied. So literature review is a stepping stone for your research. Very, very important. It is a stepping stone. If you have a good literature review and try to find out who has studied about your topic, that means what? Review of literature, literature review is helping you to keep you up to date. It is helping you to create a background for your study. It is helping you. It is becoming a handy guide to you. And not only that, if somebody questions you that why have you taken this particular topic, you can always say that this particular topic was studied by Dr. X, but he has studied in this manner, and I am studying in this manner. This particular topic was taken up as a main research in that country, and now I am studying in this country. So what happens, my friends? It increases the credibility. Your credibility of your research increases. Credibility of your research is very, very important part of your research. So review of literature helps. It is just like a strong backbone. Without a backbone, a human being cannot stand up. Similarly, without literature review, there cannot be any research. So friends, what is the main aim of literature review? The main aim of literature review is that it helps to integrate findings with existing knowledge. You have taken 10 books, you have taken 20 research papers, you have gone through so many online, you have gone through so many researches. So what happens? From everything, you try to find out that what did you gain about what did you
शेयर है कि नहीं है तुम लोग लाए नहीं
ऑनलाइन और यहाँ पे ज्यादा जगह नहीं है सॉरी क्लासरूम में कितना है तो
the organizers, if you can help me out by muting.
Yes, ma'am, I have muted, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sonali. Yeah, so from everything what is happening, we can integrate the findings. We can find out what different researchers wanted to say about the particular topic. You know, and it is not that every topic will be supporting your research. There's some topics which can contradict as well. But the simple point is that you are able to identify the gap and justify your research question. And that is why your review of literature is so very important. So friends, we can easily find out now what is the purpose of literature review. The purpose of literature review is to show the knowledge of the topic. The more richer, the more heavier your literature review is, you have more stronger background. You know, many a times you will find many people asking you that, oh, how many literature review I have to do? 20, 30, 40, 50? No, number is not the matter. It is the justification that matters. You have to prove that so many people have studied, and so many people have studied the same topic, but they have not studied in the way you are trying to study. If you justify it, that does not mean you will have 5 literature review. Okay, if you can justify it, then it becomes a solid, a firm case of research. So what happens, you know, this justification comes when you do a proper literature review. Moreover, it helps you to keep current as well. You come to know that about your topic, who else is also studying now, which is very, very important. As I said, it is a stepping stone, and it can increase the credibility of your research increases. So review of literature is very, very important. Before you start your research and think of a topic, please start your review of literature. Always, review of literature should start. It is a very, very academic in nature. So unless and until review of literature is done well, a proper research cannot take place. The question comes, how do we create literature review? It is just not writing pages after pages. Literature review, to many of us, it is just a descriptive summary. You take hold of 10 books, A has said what, B has said what, C has said what. But it is not so. It is a critical and analytical study. That means A has said this, but whether you you take that into account or not, whether you support this idea or not. B has said this, but whether you support this idea or not, whether A supported that idea or not, whether A and B were having the same view or not, or they were contradicting to each other. That means what? It is just not writing one after the other what they have done. You are critically analyzing it, whether you are confirming it or not, or others have studied are also confirming it or not. So it is a critical and analytical account. It is just not a presentation of your own argument. That does not mean that only you tell your point. Yes, this is right, that is right. No, you have to write about what others have said. You have to write what others have said. At the same time, you have to write about what you are saying. That is literature review. So literature review cannot be an annotated bibliography. You read and write. No, over here, there must be many ideas. There must be arguments. Every idea cannot be taken up as it is. You have your own arguments as well. It is just not an account of every existing piece. For example, you take 10 books. That does not mean all those 10 books will be included in review of literature. No, maybe you read all 10 and then you try to find out which one is more familiar to you, which one is sounding right, and you select and write. So you have to select and write it. So what is literature review? How to create a literature review? It has to be critical. You have to write what did A say, what did B say, but at the same time, you will have to also write about your argument. Not only about your argument, you will also have to write about whether A supported B or A did not support B. It has to be organized around the ideas and arguments. You might study so many books, so many papers, but you have to be very selective. There should not be any repetition. Very, very selective when making the review of literature. If we come to types of literature review, many of us feel that literature review is just taking hold of a book and writing down what did the author feel about the book or about the researcher. But there are various types of literature review. It can be narrative, it can be systematic, it can be argumentative, it can be integrative as well. What is narrative? Narrative means the review critiques the literature and summarizes. A has studied this, this is that, A should not have said like this and A should have said like this. You're just criticizing, being a critic and summarizing. Systematic is the comprehensive study. Systematic means you go according to the time frame. You write about 2007, then you write about what has come in 2008. Then you say what has come in 2010 and so on. So it should be very according to the time frame you write. Argumentative, from the name implies you can understand. Generally, you write what A has written, what B has written, and then you try to trying to build up a theory whether A has the same view or A has a different view, whether A is supporting B or B is not supporting A in an argumentative life. An integrative literature review means all the on the basis of your research topic, whatever you find, it is synthesized in one proper manner, and then it is being said. So that is an integrative. But commonly in our everyday research, or if you're doing a review of literature for your PhD, for your dissertation, for your research paper, it is systematic literature. In the high-level researches, sometimes you have integrative literature as well. But generally, my friends, we have systematic review of literature. when you're making this review of literature, be it a paper, be it a project report, be it a thesis, whatever it may be, you have to plan it out very well. We have to plan, we have to research, we have to organize it properly, and then we have to write. Let us see this 4 points properly, the steps properly, and I'm sure when you follow this 4 steps properly, your review of literature comes out to be an excellent one. Now, as I was coming to, sometimes they come and suppose a student is working on pollution. Okay, they will come and ask sometimes, madam, which book to refer on? Obviously, when you're studying pollution, you'll have to look into the book of pollution only. Take, for example, you have to know for your teeth, you have to go to the dentist. You will not go to the hockey player. Okay. Similarly, if you want to buy ice skates, you will not go to a dentist because he doesn't know anything about it. He will go to a hockey player. So whichever field you are doing a research, you will be selecting your review of literature from that field only. So let us see how to plan it up. You have a broad topic, air pollution in Mumbai. It's a broad topic. If you really click air pollution in Mumbai, you get 1001, research papers which has been written. So what happens? You have to make it very, very narrow. You have to narrow down the topic. Okay, maybe air pollution in northern Mumbai or air pollution in some ward. So you have to narrow down the topic. You should always take the topic as a cake, as if you're taking a slice of cake. So you should narrow down your topic and then start searching. Your literature review will come out to be an excellent one. For example, you're working in finance. What is a narrowed down topic? Finance for sustainable development. Here your main keywords becomes what? Finance and sustainable development. Accounting, maybe you're working on forensic accounting. Again, finance, you're working on environmental finance. So if you just put, suppose you're on Google Scholar and you're just putting finance, you have, I think, in lakhs papers will come. It is not, you will never end up with research. Okay, so you always have to narrow down your topic. This is the first step, my friends. First step is narrow down your topic when you start your literature review. Then you start looking for the books, journals, or Google Scholar, whatever you do. First, narrow down your topic. Second is the research. That means you try to find out, depending upon your topic, that where you will find majority of your review of literature, whether it is in the books or it will be in the journals, or for some topics, like for example, you're working on COVID. For that case, you don't have a book, you don't have journal articles. Maybe you will find it in newspaper articles. So whether it is newspaper articles or historical records or commercial records, even thesis and dissertations you can look into. So researching is very, very important. But just as the research cat is saying here, we cannot take a Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not an acceptable source. So first of all is narrowing down, that is your plan. And secondly, trying to find out where you will find papers or information regarding your research in books, in journals, in newspaper articles, whatever. Okay, now take for example, generally, when we started our researches, the only place of review of literature is the library, where you find the books and journals. It is an old method of doing review of literature, and it is a permanent method of doing review of literature. How much ever, with Google Scholar and all, the amount of information which you get is immense. But a researcher's best friend has to be books and the journal papers. Only going through Google Scholar, at least me as a researcher, I am not very comfortable. I always feel the credibility of your research increases when you have different types. You should have a book, you should have journals, even you should have databases, you should have your Google Scholar sources. So it should be variety. But with electronic media coming in, you just cannot ignore books and journals. They will be our forever best friend for every researcher in any corner of the world. Now, and books, what happens, and nowadays in the books, we have e-book collections in the libraries as well. So your information, getting information becomes very, very, it becomes very, very easy. So you have got lots of books in your hand. You have it in print media, also you have ebook. And only what you have to do, you have to locate these books very well, and in the library you can go and find out from the catalog, or the librarian is always there. You can ask him or her. So they will be helping you out with the books in your subject. Peer-reviewed journals, definitely you should go for peer-reviewed journals, because in the peer-reviewed journals you have scholarly papers, and these scholarly papers are written by experts, and so they will also be of a great help. You will always try to find out else have studied about your topic. So the peer-reviewed journals will really give you that who else have studied about your topic and in what manner. As I said, Google Scholar is although Google Webs, it is a subset of Google Web Search. Okay, so Google Scholar is very, very beneficial nowadays, because you have large number of articles, theses, books, abstract, whatever you ask for, even court opinions, technical reports, whatever you ask for is available in Google Scholar. Only what you have to do, you have to search in Google Scholar very, very, in a very, very proper manner. After searching, when you get the results, even in Google Scholar, you can set up your own library, because you cannot read everything, whatever you get. Suppose you put a keyword, your keyword may be climate change. You get maybe 50 journal papers, name of scholarly articles dealing with climate change. So you can select at least 20 and put them into the library. So what will happen, later on, whenever you get time, you can go to the library and read the scholarly paper. So nowadays, doing review of literature has really become very, very easy. Not only that, in Google Scholar, you have another option of setting up alerts. Take, for example, climate change in India. Suppose, or as I've said, given an example, Russian-Ukraine conflict. That is the topic. That is the topic in which I am working for my research. So I have put an alert. So whenever whoever in any part of the world writes a paper, a scholarly paper on Russian-Ukraine conflict, that comes in my email. It is a fantastic source of review of literature. Really, your working becomes much more easier. Nowadays, making a review of literature, I think it is very, very faster than what we had done earlier, depending only on physical mode of books and journals. Not only that, in Google Scholar, I think you have a session on citation. But in Google Scholar also, once you put all the information, what is the name of the type of the article, the name of the researcher, the name of the journal, the publisher, the page number, and you just have to write in which style, in APA style, in MLS style, in which style you want your citation. And just with a click of a button, your citation is ready. So within 10 minutes, the students can make a fantastic citation list. So friends, whoever is in the platform, if you're really interested in doing a review of literature, please do, along with your books and library. The importance of library cannot be denied. It was always important, and it will be important till the concept of research is existing. It is always there, but at the same time, you can always look into Google Scholar. You can always look into Google Scholar also. Google Scholar is also a great source of literature review. Okay, so often you will find your guides telling you don't use Google. You're not supposed to, because it is a web content. But Google Scholar is not. It is very different. Google Scholar is something where you have your scholarly books, you have your articles, you have your documents. So you can use. You can very proudly say that for your review of literature, you have used Google Scholar. In Google Scholar, you also have a concept called advanced search. That means you can put timelines. Take, for example, my topic, my keywords are climate change, India. So I can also select a timeline. I want papers after 2010. So that also I can select. So only the scholarly papers which has been published after 2010 will be made available in my mailbox, not prior to that. You can understand, my friends, by using Google Scholar, how easy it can be. See on the left side of the screen, there is any time since 2012, since 2011, since 2008. So you can easily make limiters. They're called limiters. And you can also create an alert and set up email alerts. It will be coming in your email. At least me as a researcher, I find this type of work to be very, very easy and interesting. As Google Scholar, you can also go for Google Books, where you have millions of, actually you are lost in the ocean of books, When I enter into this Google Scholar and Google Books, you really don't know which book to pick up and which one not to, So there is so much of information available. My point is that, only that you plan your research well, you research it well, and then organize it well. Once you can do this, your writing of review of literature will be a fantastic one, because so many sources are there. You can get immense sources. You can always contradict your ideas. You can always say which author has the same idea as which author did not follow the same idea as the other author. You have so many things to write in it. So your review of literature will be a very, very interesting one. That's why I started my talk by saying that it is said to be a very, very, very boring. I can understand. If you do not understand review of literature, definitely it's boring. But actually it is not. It is the most finest part of research. You have many open access journals as well. These are all open access journals and databases which you can say. But one thing you have to remember, if you have to build up a review of literature in a proper manner, never have only one source. Only books, this book, that book, that book. Only research papers. No, don't do it. Mix up the sources. That is a real research. That is a real review of literature. You can have a combination of books. You can have a combination of few research articles. You can have some scholarly points, even people from literature. You can have it from letters. You can have an edited collection of essays. You can have from media. You can have so many sound recordings. You can have a film, a TV, a video recording, magazines, even personal interviews. So please do mix up the sources. When you mix up the sources, what happens? It becomes interesting. Main thing is to hold your readers, hold your viewers. Your research also should be very, very interesting, So, and now take, for example, I visited the library, I saw 10 books. Will I be able to remember from all the 10 books what has happened? No. When you are a researcher, I feel you should have a notebook and a compass box always with you. Whenever you're writing something, please do, whenever you're reading something, please do highlight and write down. Okay, because if you do not write down, what will happen, you will forget. Okay, so always try to write down and store it up. Now everyone stores it up in computers, right? Then store it up. Whenever you're reading a book or you're reading a research paper, just concentrate. If you do not feel like reading, don't read it. But if you are reading it, please concentrate. My point is that, first of all, I do reading thrice. Okay, read it, forget it. Again, the second time when I read it, I dig deeper. I try to think how the particular point, whatever I'm reading, how it is aligned with my research. Again, dig deeper and try to find out if it is connected to my research, in what way it is connected, whether whatever the author has said, whether I am ready to accept his views or not accept his views. So whenever maybe you read one book, read one research paper, but please concentrate. We can see the research cat here. He's reading it so peacefully, and so his concentration level is the highest. We should be like that. Concentrate on what you do. Maybe 2 books, 1 book, but it should be becoming resourceful in nature. Now, generally, what happens, as I said, you have to narrow down your topic. I do a long topic, but I take out some keywords and then I put it and search it, whether I go to a physical library or I go to Google Scholar, whatever. There's another method which has come out. In fact, in Western world, this type of method of doing review of literature has picked up very well. It is known as backward chronological search. Take, for example, you take a paper, a research paper. In the research paper, last part of the research paper, you have the reference, where the names of the books, names of the papers, and so on are written. That means the author has written about the books and journals, what he had referred to. So what you do, you go and search those books. You go and search those researches. This is known as... बुलाम नहीं बोलो तो 10-15 मिनट वेट करने कोई नहीं है मैं नहीं बोला आपको बोलो 15 मिनट वेट करने को हाँ so it's known as so you have to search out the references and this is known as backward chronological search. Whenever you do this literature survey, as I said, no, you write up the notes. Okay, what you have to do, you have to make a note. Now, making a note also has a pattern. You can make it in the form of a table. Okay, first of all, in the first column, you can write down the quotes which you are taking from an article. In the second part, from wherever you have taken the article, you write down the citation information. That means the author's name, the publication year, the page number, and so on. And then you write down your own interpretation, how it is, you write down your own interpretation, how it is proper or not, how it is connected. So, you will not lose out on anything. So you have the article, what you're doing, you have the citation and you have your interpretation also. So when you are writing the review of literature, it will become much more easier. There are 2 ways of citing the sources. You have in-text citation. That means once you are writing down the review of literature, generally author's last name comes and the year comes. Sometimes it is in, if it is MLA format, the page number comes. And the full reference comes at the end of the paper, end of your research, where you write down everything according to the source. Now, how to organize your resources? You have to, either you quote the source. Okay, quoting the source means putting into inverted comma. When you do so, but generally nowadays with plagiarism in, it is said that quoting the sources should be minimum. Whenever you get some idea from some book, don't just copy whatever you get it. You have to write in your own words, always. This is known as paraphrasing the source. Please do write in your own words. Maybe the idea is the same, but write in your own words, and then it will not come in plagiarism. Because whenever you're doing review of literature, we have to remember that we have to avoid plagiarism. Friends, we have planned our review of literature. We have found out our keywords, and then we have gone to the library, searched the books, searched the journals. We have even used Google Scholar. We have even gone to several databases and so on. We have made the table. In the table, we have written down which quotes, which ideas to be taken. We have written down who has written, when he has written, which publication, which page number, which journal, and we have written our interpretation also. So everything is at place. Now we have to organize it properly. Okay, how do we organize? Generally, we organize it chronologically, according to the date. That is the simplest way of organizing, or we organize according to the trend of change, an idea, or according to the theme. Sometimes we organize according to the method, and sometimes according to theory. But the main way by which we generally organize review of literature is chronological, as I said. Okay, now every one of you have seen a desk drawer like this. So what you do, generally in desk drawers, we sort our things and keep it separately. No? So review of literature also needs to be sorted. Take for example, you're writing climate change in India. So I will have one drawer which is dealing only with climate change theories. I will have another drawer which is dealing with climate change applications and where it has occurred. I will have one drawer which is having climate change, how it has affected the world. I will have another drawer, how climate change has affected India. So you see, when you are storing it, you can have different folders dealing with different ideas of the topic. This is very much important. So I always remember a desk drawer where we keep similar items in a particular desk. Similarly, for your review of literature, you make different folders, and in different folders, according to ideas, you sort out your literature. This will become much more easier. Sometimes you know what happens, what I do, that depends upon my research paper. Sometimes I have two folders, and in one folder I keep the literature review, which are opposing arguments, and the other one I'm keeping about the findings. For example, I have to find out about the death penalty, whether death penalty reduces violent crime, while others find it has no effect on violence. Okay, so what will happen? In one drawer, I'm keeping it the death penalty, which is reducing the violent crime, and other drawer I'm having it death penalty has got no effect on violence. Okay, so different ideas in different places. This will really help you out. It's the same thing about different theories. For example, you want to find out the relationship between youth crime and family cohesiveness, peer association, education commitment. So over here, I will make 3 folders. One showing the youth crime and family cohesiveness, another youth crime and peer association, another youth crime and educational commitment. So when I am trying to summarize it, it becomes much more easier instead of just storing it in one in one folder. Similarly, different theories also you can do it, different research methods. Okay, some papers are using qualitative methods, some papers are using quantitative methods. So all the qualitative researchers you can keep in one folder, all the quantitative researchers you can keep in one more folder. Once we have organized it, we have made folders and kept it, the question comes in mind, how many researchers we take from historical part and how many of current. Now that depends upon your subject. Suppose you're doing it on history, definitely it is the past researchers which will come. You're doing it in science, in physics, in biochemistry, obviously maybe 2-3 years ka review of literature you have to take. So because technology is changing, the changes are very, very often. They're changing very fast, and that is why always you have to keep it. You have to take care of the current situations only. So your review of literature, from which year you will be taking, that depends upon your subject. Once we have planned out, we have researched out, we have organized. Planned means we have found out the keywords. Research means gone to the books, journals, Google Scholar, whatever. Organized means we have made different folders and we have organized it. We have made a table and organized it. Now the time comes to write your literature review. For writing a literature review, always a literature review should be divided into 3 parts: introduction, body, and conclusion. In the introduction, always you should focus the purpose of literature review. In the body, depending upon the length of the research review, you can even divide the body into sections, and in the body you should write down who has said what about your research topic. And in the conclusion, you should find out the findings, that what everyone has said about your research. And a part of the conclusion will be the gaps, that what gap in research you could find out. This is very, very important. So your introduction, your body, your conclusion, and then the gap. The steps of literature review, if you see, first choose your topic, second identify the databases, third search and refine where you can search, read and analyze, and fifth will be writing the review. Review of literature, as I said, why it is important, because it brings clarity and focus. See, my friends, we have done so much about our research topic. Our research has not started now. It is just the beginning of the research, where you have found out so many things about your research. Don't you feel you have gained so much of knowledge about your research? It has helped you to find out the gap. With this knowledge now, you can easily bridge the gap. See, the key, the person is bridging the gap. It gives us idea how to bridge the gap, how to carry on with your further research. And in review of literature, you can always make the links. Like you can write. Suppose A and B, author A and author B has the same point. You can write similarly. Author B also points out. Likewise, author C also makes the case. Author D also makes a point. They are all agreements when they're supporting each other. Suppose different authors are not supporting each other. You can write in different manner. Why in different type of sentences I've put? Because, they make it interesting. However, A said this and B pointed out. Or A said this. On the other hand, author C makes the case like that. C has said this, but conversely, author D argues. E has said this, but nevertheless, author F has suggested this. So, there are different ways. You're playing with the language, okay? And then you can write, you're making links between the studies. As I was mentioning yesterday also, I wanted to study about the traffic congestion in Mumbai. So I started doing literature review. I wanted to find out the gap. Finding out the gap, I realized that on traffic congestion, there are a lot of work in Gwalior, in Asansol, in Delhi, but there is hardly any work in Greater Mumbai. So that is a gap which I have identified. And how did I identify? I've identified through review of literature. So review of literature not only provides a backbone to your research, but it increases the confidence of the researcher, which is very, very important. So you become more disciplined. You know what framework you're working on. You know what is the methodology. So you are properly disciplined, and unless and until you're disciplined, you cannot carry on your research. So really, my friends, literature review helps us to define and develop our topic. It helps us to identify the gaps, and it helps us to go see the depth and breadth of the topic. And not only that, you also come to know about the past researchers. You come to know about the researchers who had already also worked in your area, which is very, very important. So friends, what can be the 7 rules of writing review of literature? Use evidence. Which book, which author, which page, which publisher? Evidence. Be selective. Reading 10 books does not mean all 10 it has to be incorporated. Use quotes sparingly, very less quotes, paraphrase them. Summarize and synthesize. Keep in your own voice, as if you are writing. Own caution. Use caution when paraphrasing. Don't copy. Use your own words. Include your own relevant research as well. Be objective. If suppose you are a researcher, you have 50 papers, 50 research papers, and you are writing the 51st one. So you might be having some of your research papers also citing in review of literature. Write it there that you are citing your own paper also. Common errors which we make, single paragraph. There is no introduction, no body, no conclusion. Single paragraph. Please don't do it. It is not the way of writing a review of literature. Okay, even in the previous past researches, you will see in your PhD, you will have a separate chapter for review of literature. That concept has been banned now. It is a part of the introduction. Don't use emotional words, felt, no. In research, there is no place for emotion. It is very, very practical. Okay. Just don't increase the number of literature review. Just because you want to increase it, certain literature review does not relate to your research at all you write. Don't do that. Your writing style should be very, very academic, neutral, non-discriminatory, non-sexist, coherence, the flow should be proper, and references and paraphrasing should be there. In common situations, sometimes we say, Madam, nothing is available. What do I write? If nothing is available, find out related topics which are available. I think yesterday we were having a discussion after my session. Find out something. None of us are Newton here. Okay, there must be something related topic as well. Find out your related topic. Take, for example, I'm doing climate change in India. Maybe in climate change, I'm not finding anything. I will have something on environmental problems. Write down. Try to find out sources from environmental problems. So something or the other will be available. Often we say this is too much. Everything. My literature, and one more sentence. My literature review is done. Your literature review is never done. How many references? All vague questions. How much time will I need? All vague questions. Unless and until you're able to support, you are able to find the gap, your literature review continues. So, friends, planning for a literature search, define the topic, think about the scope, think about the outcome, think about the management, and plan your research in advance. Then only literature review can be done in a proper manner, otherwise not. These are some of the goals why we do. We have already discussed it. Writing process. First, writing can never be the final one. Make a rough draft, make the final draft, edit it again. Then only you have it proper. Literature review is just like a sandwich. You have something bread on the top. Then you have the quotes where you have to explain, and then you analyze the quote. It's just like a sandwich. Okay. Literature review might look very, very light, but actually it is as heavy as a sandwich. So my flow of presentation was, we all have understood now review of literature. We have understood the aim and purpose. We have understood how to create it. We have understood the types. We have understood how to conduct it. We have understood the different parts. We have understood the steps. We have understood the simple rules. We have understood the errors. You have understood the writing style, goals, and writing process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed an enlightening session for all of us. I now request participants to please post their questions in the chat box.
There are questions in the chat box.
As of now, no questions are there.
Participants can unmute themselves and also ask the questions.
If there are no questions, we can end for the day then. Anybody, any questions?
An attendance link would be posted in the chat box. Kindly fill that link for the attendance record. It has been posted in the chat box. It's a request for the participants to kindly fill in.
There are no questions.
It was very extensive, as I say, when you express so much, like we are clear with all the doubts and everything. I and Sonali were also having some doubt regarding our PhD research proposal, but during the session only, ma'am, it got clear. So we will
we'll move to vote of thanks then.
Thank you, madam. On behalf of the management, director, madam, vice principal and IQAC coordinator, organizing committee and the institution, I sincerely thank the resource person, Professor Dr. Moshmi Datta, for enlightening us with her knowledge. Madam said that a review of literature is the backbone of every research. She explained how to plan a review of literature, what types of resources are useful for review of literature, and how a researcher can work to build review of literature precisely. She spoke about how to organize sources and maintain a log of it, which is really very important for every researcher. Madam, we had some questions in our mind, but you have cleared them all in your session. I once again want to state that we are grateful to Professor Dr. Moshmi Datta. We thank you for being with us. It has been a great pleasure, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Moshmi.
Thank you.
everyone. Looking forward for tomorrow, the session would be on research process and research methodology based on primary data. So we'll meet tomorrow for the workshop based on tomorrow's topic. Thank you, everyone.
We end the session.